this thing here. There.
You good?
I think I'm good. Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
You're good.
You don't have to be there in the doorway.
Goodbye.
It's weird. Alright. And the delay's there. And I'm up and I'm streaming. Maybe nobody knew I was streaming today. Huh. Alright. I'm looking for this. Howdy, guys. Yeah, Trevor has a different setup. Wait here. Hello, everybody. And we're getting ready to start. I'm doing solo today because Trevor's been sick. And so I kicked him out of the room. Looks like I froze. No, I didn't. Oh, he's got the camera off kilter. Let me see if I move it this way. Does this work? No. I really can't do much with it. See if I can get it. Don't know what. I don't know. Okay. Anyhow. Dog wants out. No, the dog's right here. He's at the blinds behind me. Looking at the window. We actually had to move the camera because the camera was actually on the monitor, the other side monitor, which I'll explain this in a minute, and it pointed at the window, which is where the dog will spend most of this time, staring outside. So he likes to look out and see what's out there, which is what he's doing now. So there we are. It is Happy Friday in the end of another week. Always come on when I'm going to bed. Well, that's I can't change time. I can't turn it back. Can't do much with it. Listen to work in a few hours. Content buddy, no problem. Okay, and then we got first snow here in southern Pennsylvania. It's kind of weird because it's snowed a couple times already up in northern Arizona. We've already been getting a lot of snow. That's a weird camera angle. Yeah, what has happened, if everybody's watching, and good evening everyone, is we bought new monitors for mixing. We weren't happy with our mixes because we were doing everything on headphones. So we needed something live in the studio to have better sound in the studio. So I bought a really nice set of JBL studio speakers. The problem is they're much larger than what we had here before. We had to do some rearranging. And because of the rearranging now, basically, and to try to balance the speakers, which I'm still trying to get him to work out, but because of the balanced speaker setup, the monitors are now in kind of a, not instead of just flat in front of me, or more in a V, so when we set the camera up, it's at an angle. So it's a different view. He had it on the other monitor, which pointed into the sunlight, and I made him change that. But Trevor is sick, not doing well the last couple of days. Seems like a lot of people have gotten a touch of something or the other, so. But, yeah, so he's in bed right now. So I am flying solo. So there we go. In 1 hour behind you, okay? And how's the weather up in the mountains? The weather's been good. It's been really cool out. So the rendezvous was pretty cool out, and it stayed down that. And the nights are probably, I get up in the morning, but I get up really early. But it's usually in the 40s, the high 40s right now. So it's nice, and then the day is nice, depending on the wind. But, you know, we have sunny afternoons. Generally, we have sunlight most of the time. So if you go out in the sunlight, it's pretty nice. So right now, the weather's perfect for being up in the mountains and everything, which I will be doing more and more. I think I misspelled your name. Oh, okay, never mind. Had Toddy's just cut short, reassembles the Bob Ward pick. Okay. So anyhow, one of the things I want to put the call out, and I can always look back at the comments if I miss anything, is there's a number of things sometimes people call out and ask for us to do on Chasing Legends on Mondays. And I know the Patchy Kid was one someone wanted to do, and I got it down, and I will work on that and do one for the Patchy Kid specifically. But I wanted some kind of, what do people kind of think we're missing here? What stories? Something they've heard of, they want to hear something more of. And I know people do throw that in, and I'll look back for a few of them, but I always try to cover them a little, or if I can catch where people are going topic-wise, try to throw something in so they get kind of a little better, deeper understanding of that. So I want to kind of do some of that so we can catch some of those up. That also gives me the advantage of being able to come in here a little prepared on a certain subject matter on Mondays and get ahead of myself, because quite often, believe it or not, much like this, is I don't have much of an agenda or anything, and even with the Chasing Legends on Mondays, which we usually shoot Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I usually just have 2 or 3 ideas float. I sit down, I might make a note or two of a couple dates that I want to make sure I catch, that I'm not off on, and then I just sit down and I wing it, believe it or not. And most of the time it's just all this stuff in my head from reading books all the time. So because of that, it's nice sometimes to get a little prepared and have some subject matter and read up stuff and get ahead. We do that once in a while, and I think those are some of the better ones. And I kind of enjoy it because I get a break, because I get to think things over more than just say, if we're going to say we're going to shoot it on Friday or Saturday, I'm kind of thinking of the idea on Thursday, and then I come up with the idea, and then I just kind of sit in the chair with a kind of a like I said, a framework, and then I just kind of do it. So there you go. And I'm getting texts. Yeah, it's someone. Okay, I don't know. Okay, my service advisor on my truck. Anyhow, so it wasn't really important. Anyhow, so that's kind of that. So if you got some stuff and some specific stories or stuff you want to know about, we can do that. So, what? The Leona account. What? Are you having a golden day? Golden Gil Gold Prospecting in San Antonio, Texas is having a golden day. Yeah, it's a pretty good day. There's a lot happened this week. I know a number of people had lost some family members or friends and so forth. So you kind of hear that out and about, and it kind of, today was kind of one of those days where I was like, wow, it's kind of rough. And I always think about those people, is because I know from my point of view of, when you lose, especially your parents or certain family members, or even worse for any of us as children. But yeah, when you kind of that kind of thing. So it's been kind of one of those weeks where that stuff kind of is reflective. So no one I personally know directly close to me, but it's people I know, and then that kind of in reflection is just kind of rough, because it's, you know what people have been through from your own self. Fortunately, I've lived long enough that I've gotten to be in that position, and it's really rough. I can't imagine, people who lose a child, especially people in their 30s and 40s. That's very, very rough. And so it was kind of one of those weeks. I heard a number of things, and some people who there were some medical struggles and stuff. And I don't know if that's just a sign of just we're getting into the winter and things like that, but what it is. But it's really rough. Let's see here. All right. Hot toddies. Well, just, just a bottle of whiskey will kill off the cold if you're drunk enough. So there you go. So yeah, if anybody has anything specific or anything like that, and like I said, I lost myself in the second childhood. Okay. My second childhood. Yeah, but do any of us, if you're a male, do you really ever really leave your first childhood? I think we just kind of are forever children in some respect or another. So we're like great big kids, giant children running around, which is kind of nice, I guess. But, everything can fascinate us to some degree or another. But again, it's been one of those quiet weeks. You get after the rendezvous, there's so much stuff to deal with, and Dutch hunting, and then the season's coming up and you're planning out trips, and then a number of things. Woody Wampler was up in the mountains for a couple weeks and prospecting, and he came out, and you catch up a little on what he had. Can you recommend a trail in the eastern half of the Superstition Mountains? Well, that just depends where you want to go. Someone's told me Tony Ranch is closed. I'd always say Haunted Canyon down into Tony Ranch, and you can go from either or trail or just do a loop trail and have vehicles at both ends, at Pinot or wherever you want to go in. But that's a really nice trail in the canyons through there. It's a nice camp, but I've heard Tony Ranch is closed. I don't know if it still is, and what's going on there. Revis is really nice when you get out in those eastern superstitions. It's getting a bit colder out, so if there's precipitation, then you might want to avoid the Revis trip and go with the Tony Ranch, so in Haunted Canyon. So, but yeah, Revis is really nice. That's a long trip. But if you can go into Revis and spend a couple days out there, and maybe even do a side trip out to Circle Stone and do stuff like that, go out to Circle Stone and come back in and spend another day at Revis, that's a really cool trip. And it depends how much supplies you can bring. Like I said, once it gets cold, the eastern superstitions get very, very cold. I never see a lot on Crystal Spring. Crystal Spring's the one by Bluff Spring, if I remember correctly, and there's always a confusion about those two springs. I think Crystal Spring is non-functional anymore, and then some people confuse it with Bluff Spring because they're right there in the immediate same area where the man, I forget the word. But the cabin they had, the line cabin, sorry, I had a moment. But the line cabin that was up at Charlie Boy, they moved that down to Bluff Spring. And Tom Collenborn, I think, helped move that in the 50s. So they moved it down to Bluff Spring. And some people argue that Crystal Spring and Bluff Spring, they kind of mixed the two together. Bluff Spring, I believe, as far as I know, still exists. That's the Bluff Spring I've always known. And Crystal Spring was just south of there, across from where everybody kind of camps with the trees and stuff. And I don't think it's functional anymore. So I would have to go and check again, because it's been so long since I checked that. Bluff Spring still is running. And since they're immediately within 10-15 minutes walk of each other. So that would be both on the north side of Miner's Needle. But yeah, it's a nice area in there. But that's what I know of is Crystal Spring, unless you have a different name for a different spring named Crystal Spring. But that was Crystal Spring and Bluff Spring on the south end of Bluff Springs Mountain. Unless for gold, race against time. Kesselring has a map with Spanish Trail in the mountains. Do you think the Dutchman, old Charlie Boy, exiting first what? Well, okay, remember Robert Kesselring, I don't understand what some of his basic thing was about the stone maps and the Latin Heart. And I know I don't even know if his books are still out there. I haven't seen either of them. There's two of them. They're both around $40-50 a piece. And haven't seen them for a while. And that's he makes his trails out of that. But then he has a bunch of other stuff he used from Barry Storm and different people. And I don't know how to always get one to mix with the other, because he seems to be more of its Jesuit treasure and gold bars, and then sometimes it's mines, and I've always gotten confusion. I know Bob's not doing really well, and we just briefly spoke recently. If he was doing well and I knew he was up for it, I'd love to have him on here, but he said he was not doing very well at all. We wish him very well. Good guy. I've had some great conversations with him. But, yeah, I don't quite always understand, and I read his books, and he donated and put a lot of his stuff in the archives. And because I'm not a stone map or Latin Heart guy, and I have a whole different perspective on all that, I didn't understand some of it. And I went out to some of his sites, because he put the GPS coordinates for everything in his books. So I went to look at a few things. I know Bill Blackwell's still out there. I'm digging around, and that would be another person I could have on, is Bill Blackwell, who was in the film with Bob and Bill's out there on a dig and doing stuff in the mountains still. And he calls me whenever he's in town and lets me know how things are going. He just recently got a hold of me about something else that we did that someone had spotted. So maybe that's someone else, but maybe they could explain it better. But yeah, I kind of, their stuff, I'm not always quite sure about that stuff. Okay, so then there was and what's the other side of the story on Mr. Ward, Bob Ward? There's so many stories about Bob Ward, but we've covered a lot of that stuff. Okay, we kind of got through that. Recommended trail, Crystal Spring. Exiting first water, somehow connecting Massacre Grounds. I don't know if Massacre Grounds has anything to do with the Dutchman story. There was remnants of gold found there. That might have been a sort of what some people call it a last stand. There's a story about skeletons found there and a bunch of other stuff by the cavalry. That's a very suspect story to a lot of people. And there's a number of things associated with that. No one's quite sure where that came out of. Silverlock Malm is the primary story and source that we have actual document record for. We know what they found. It's thought that the Apaches had taken out the last of what was remaining of the Peraltas in that area. And that's always, it's not the Peraltas necessarily I think it's an Apache Jack story, but Apache Jack's story can be placed in a number of different places. And he says they took all the burros and mules up on a high mountain. And there's two places that you can tell they'd worked out probably mules or burros at, and that's Bluff Springs and Horse Mesa, which are hard to connect to Massacre Grounds. I've heard always the theory that the first massacre occurred and started down in the area of Horse Mesa, Black Cross Butte, and along the Salt River, and then they finished them off at Massacre Grounds. Other people believe it started in the mountains, and they worked their way out through First Water to Massacre Grounds. I tend to side with the first one a little more, seeing how there's the rastras and a lot of things I've seen up around Horse Mesa. It makes more sense. So, hey, Rocky. So there we go. So Rock has moved in here with Jax. No, he's just leaving. He just decided to open a door and leave. So that's kind of my take on that. Maybe I should do something on that and those two different things too. So the Massacre Grounds and I thought we did, but maybe I just need to make one like that. Lost a couple friends this week too. Yeah, it's just, and that happens as you get older. But yeah, I was just kind of like, it was a week. I think it was about a week of period of hearing from different people and stuff. And every person was pretty devastated by their losses. And that's always kind of brings you down a little in the week, because when it reminds you of when you've been there yourself as well. And you kind of really feel for them. So let's see here. So sorry for well, it's not my loss, it's others' losses. Hi Wayne, how's it going? Home to Ireland, McCracken. And you can see the shirt. So, yes, the shirt today. It was unintentional. It was just simply, this is one of them shirts I wear around the house. And I threw it on and I didn't even think about it. And then I was coming in here and I was like, well, I'm not going to change the shirt. I'm just going to leave the shirt on. It's like one of those comfortable shirts. And I don't remember a particular reason why I am Irish, but I don't remember a particular deeper reason or anything that I got the shirt. It just says Irish. It doesn't say hi, I'm Irish or anything like that. It just says Irish. So, but I thought it was one of those kind of, it's like the funky message, not quite sure what it's supposed to mean. And so there you go. But yeah, there. Okay. So yeah, I did remember to wear the Irish shirt today. So with the very similar to Mexico flag. So, which is confusing to some people. Do you know about Don Shade, Hiding Gold Out by Wes Boulder? That was referenced in Glover's book. I knew a little bit about Don Shade and got some kind of that. That's a good person to kind of talk about sometime. And that at length, some of Don Shade's time. One of the things I want to do, and I think everybody would enjoy this, is start going through, and I'm going to do this, is we have 36 members not 36 right now, 30, we'll have 31 members in the Treasure Hunter Hall of Fame, which is basically the Treasure Hunt of the Year awards and so forth. And we're inducting this year 30 or 31 Veterans Committee members. And there's a lot of people that I've never touched upon, and a lot of guys currently that we've talked about or we've just mentioned briefly who've went in. If I can't sit down and talk with them and have something with them, I'd like to talk about them. So I thought that would be another thing to give recognition to a lot of those guys. And we've talked at length, but about a number of different individuals. And Clay Wurst has talked plenty about his life, and we've talked about Bob Ward and different people. But it's interesting to talk about these guys who people don't catch the names of or something, or the reason they got in and so forth. So maybe we'll do some of those, and especially the Veterans Committee members. Tom Collenborn's in there, but we just barely surface and talk about George Collenborn, his father, who was a Dutch hunter, preceded him. Tom was a second generation Dutch hunter. And I'm just trying to think of other people. Obviously, we've talked to Ed Piper and Celeste Jones, Julia Thomas, Reinhard Patrish Herman, and those guys. We don't always get into some of the other guys that were in the mountains. So we've covered a good extent, but we're talking at this point something like 60 some odd people. We haven't referenced all of them. So it would be nice of a nod to do those types of things for them. And that's something to go in between some of the histories. So there you go. So it's something we'll be doing. Awfully cool in the shirt. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is cozy this evening. Thanks for the post about the two paths. I take it you're not a big fan of the stone maps. I have every book, proper book, not stuff that just people throw together. I have every proper book written about the stone maps. I have probably a collection of well over 1,000 high-definition photos that I've taken in shade, indoors, and outdoors in the sunlight of the stone maps. I've handled the stone maps and actually had them in my hands and stuff. I've had a lot to do with them. My belief is different than doing research. Am I a fan? I'm not a fan of sometimes the theories as much. I'm kind of a fan of the story. I'm a fan of the Travis Tomlinson saga, a number of things about it, and I find some of it interesting of why they did these things and where they were and different things like that. Now, that's different than what a person, and I'm not going to use anyone's name on here, who's into the stone maps, and you know who you are, but their various theories. I don't like to single someone out. And so if someone has their own particular theory and stuff, sometimes people get that mixed up with, well, you're not interested at all. I'm interested. I'm not interested in the 1001 theories of where they lead to as much. If someone gave me something besides Google Earth photos and something a little more concrete that I could deal with, that'd be one thing. Now, Brad Cooper, Joe Roboto, I'm using some names people use it on forums as Mula. I'm not going to, I think his name was Mike. Anyways, those guys could talk to me for hours about this stuff. So you have to remember 20 years ago, 15, 20, 25 years ago, there were people that spoke to me sometimes. I mean, Brad Cooper talked to me a couple times on the phone for 4 to 5 hours, multiple times about stuff with the stone maps and how his configuration. So when you realize how much time I heard all that stuff early on and then the research and everything else, sometimes people get me on the phone and stuff, or they send me emails or they send messages and they don't realize I've been through so much of it. I'm kind of like, okay, it's another one, and it's confusing to me because I don't think there's been any two people that have completely unrelated have come to the same site, same specific spot, which that can fascinate me a little, is how does that happen with everybody, that random exchange. But it's never a knock on it. So I always get that I have interest, and I have probably a larger collection and files and material on the stone maps than a lot of the guys who are into stone maps. But it doesn't mean I'm a stone map guy as far as fooling those and stuff. So I hope that answers that. Okay. Let's see. Are there other women besides Julia Thomas? Very few. There was Celeste Jones, another black woman who was down there with Ed Piper. there was Peg Ayler. She was there with Chuck Ayler, and then they divorced and separated, and Peg was still in the mountains for a certain amount of time. It was sometimes there was second generational, not second generation, but Dutch hunting women who were with their husbands in the mountains and continued on and stuff, similar to the Doc Noss Victoria's Peak story, and then Nova Noss continues on after Doc's dead. There's some of that, but as far as prominent women, and even today I know there's women who are interested in the story and talk. Amy Moser, I think I briefly met her once. She wrote a book on the Lost Dutchman, but then she seemingly almost vanished after that. She was one of the very few people that kind of sort of got into that. And to me, it's always interesting because there is a thing, and I will talk about it right here, is generally the Dutchman is a WASP thing. It's a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male type thing. And it is kind of funny because it does follow that. Now, there are some Catholics, but so WASCs too. But it's not a thing, and I've talked to a lot of people. You don't find a lot of people who are Hispanic or black. I don't think I've ever met an Asian into the Dutchman. And you find it odd how thin that is. The two black women I know I can associate with the legend, that black people are, Celeste Jones and Julia Thomas. And how black was Julia. So it's kind of odd. You would think certainly there are many more. There's been women, like I said, that are interested, but that doesn't seem to be sustaining. And I don't know what it is. You come to the rendezvous, there's the girlfriends and wives. There are a few people, I'm not going to use their names, but they did introduce themselves. There are people that have an interest, and they might come for a year or two, and then they just kind of fade out. I don't know if it's they just don't feel secure enough, or I'm not going to use the word brave because you're not a coward because of it, but going into the mountains on their own, or the partnerships or stuff. So I know there's the women that have been married to Dutch hunters that go in the mountains. I know Luann Schuss went in the mountains and she was into it, and she went in spending a time in the mountains with Bob. I know Jane Feldman probably spent plenty of time in the mountains with Ron. So, but I don't know. Now Luann I know was a bit of a Dutch hunter, but that's not singularly separately as an individual, which is what I think you were thinking of. And like I said, there's just really the two. I know there's one other woman, but her husband was, again, it just comes down to there was a partner that was in there. So singularly the women, it's very, very rare. There are women are associated. I know it was like Shenandoah Blackfeather, but she was kind of like a packer. I think she worked for one of the packers and so forth, and she raised horses or trained horses or bred horses. And she died. I think she wasn't that old. I think she was in her 40s maybe when she passed away. But I don't know if she was necessarily, say, a treasure hunter. So there are some women associated. We have Elizabeth Stewart, who co-wrote The Hiking Guides with Jack Carlson, but I don't necessarily see her as a Dutch hunter. So, and there are a lot of women that wrote fictional books. Now, fiction's different. You can find a lot of female authors that write fictional books. But yeah, it's a good question. It's one of those things, just like I said, is different cultures and stuff. I don't know what it is, and it always makes me curious because I've asked people that I work with and people that I've introduced to the mountains is, what is it? Does it just not interest you, or what is it, or what is that thing? So, yeah, it's a good question. I'm always trying to figure out what it is because there seem to be a lot of women that are interested in discussing this during the lives or watching the videos. It just doesn't translate to the mountains. I guess that's what I'm really saying, and I find that odd because I would say, it's still male heavy on all this, but yeah, I would think that is a good question because the interest is there. Why doesn't it kind of continue on over there? Okay, so I'm gonna get caught up because I'm gonna get way behind. Topaz, okay, there, women besides Julia Thomas. Have you ever been to the Arizona Domes? Yes, I saw that. Something to do with Apaches. I don't know about that. I don't know which domes because I know there's several different domes. I'll try to get to that, and once I see a couple. Here's his two. I just obtained a Mystery of Gold. The Super Bob Garman. Is that a book you like? I liked Bob Garman. The book, God, it touches anything that Bob Garman did. It was like very, very light. I've got a lot of interviews of him. Eventually, the archives will have those. It's hours of interviews with him, talking about his history in the mountains and his searches in the mountains for Herman Petrasch. He predominantly, individually, was a silver miner. I think even in the book he talks, he was looking for silver, and then he literally just kind of like, once Herman died, he switched and he wasn't looking for the Dutchman. He said too many people are looking for the Dutchman and it was too difficult. So he went prospecting just for silver again on that respect. The domes, I know there's some domes. I don't know if you're talking about the natural domes and all. I need more of that. But there's stuff southwest of me here. And then there's some domes they're called the domes, and those are basically, I think they were like kilns or something, like, not kilns, I'm trying to remember what they are, but they're kind of like coke ovens or whatever. But they're out east, and I know Frank and them went to that. That was something I left for them because there's a private owner there, and I didn't really try to have much to do with them because of the private ownership on the property. It's very difficult to get to, but I didn't want anyone to mess with it because a few people went out there have actually vandalized out there, and I really don't want to give the guy any more trouble than he's had. No thermal springs. There are thermal springs in the Superstition Mountains. It's up in, is it LaBarge? LaBarge. I can't remember the name of it, but there is a thermal spring there. It's 3 calderas. There's probably more than a few, but there's one that's predominantly known, and it's a hot spring. And it's a thermal spring, and I'm trying to remember, it's in the northwestern section of the Superstition Mountains. I'm trying to remember a couple of the key names. I know the area because I've been to it, and it's there. Salvador would remember the name of it, too. It's not Warm Springs. It's, can't remember what it is. I'll have to, here, I'll put that down, too. It's the hot springs. But, no, there is a hot spring in Superstitions because it's a geothermal event, and yes, there are a few places, but that one is predominantly known in people. What about Estee Conister? Yes, I got in a lot of interview stuff on her. Most of the stuff I seemed to get from her was on the stone map. She seemed to go stone map. Kind of that. No, it wasn't. It was Michael Bilbrey, the stone crosses. She really got into that for a while. I never could figure out, because she interviewed Michael Bilbrey, and then she talked about a lot of that. And I wasn't quite sure if she was believing in it and going that direction or not. I kind of liked her book. I didn't understand what the whole Lost Dutchman Jr. thing was. I know the area. I went through that area and up in Tortilla and Tortilla Ranch and a lot of the stuff they did. It wasn't Dutch hunting interesting to me, but it was an interesting book. And they covered some cool ground and stuff. And she covered some cool stories. I think if she would have written a second book, it would have been even better, because I think she was just kind of starting to scrape off the big opening of that and stuff. Okay. All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Greetings from Scotland. Oh, now we got Ireland, we got Scotland, and I'm Scottish too. So there he goes. So I'm Celt, Gaelic, and all those things. Love the show. It's the real deal. Okay. Thanks for sharing it. You're a legend. Thank you. So then we got Scotland and we got Ireland, and there we go. All the lens. The lens that count. Well, we can't leave out the Welsh, even though they spell everything silly. Wayne, how many people have had sightings of anything in the legend? Real sighting of anything in the legend, like the Hoya. From now back to 79, to understand what it was. There are a number of things. And there are some things that have been destroyed, signs that we know are particular that go way, way back, like the R cactus, which I always thought the R cactus, and you probably, maybe in Barry Storm's book, I don't know if you have that, but it's an R, and people said, oh, Ramon Peralta and stuff. I always wondered if it was Reinhard Petrasch put his initial in the cactus. But those things are marked. There's stones, large stones, and they're marked underneath, so that if you know the site, you can turn the stone, because it's like the Palo Verde that Adolf Ruth's skull was found is gone, but there's a a rock, large rock, boulder, small boulder, marking the site. And it's, if you look underneath, it has the markings. And we've made sure we've kept track of that. There was a lot of stuff from John Burbridge. If you ever get the pamphlet, Lost Mines Monuments. And Burbridge, a lot of the pinnacles and spires and different claims that the Spanish or Mexicans would have made in the mountains, he noted those. Unfortunately, this is before GPS, and I don't think he mapped a lot of it. He did some, but he photographed a ton of it all the way through the mountains and the monumented trails. He really, for a guy off the trail in the brush looking for stuff, was pretty awesome. He found arastras. He found, like I said, the spires for mining claims for the different corner setups of different things. And this is very old stuff that he was finding probably in the 40s and 50s. And then it was old. And he did, I think he might have been the individual that refound the blaze, one of the blazes that maybe Joe Deering made. There was a lot of stuff interconnected. Now, his stuff's tough to decipher because unless he didn't really have anything that got passed down through family, he died, and he did verbally pass on things to tuning, and there were things that people, and well, I'm not saying Burbridge, but Deering, but John Burbridge, I don't know who that got passed down to. Now, Greg, his collection got split in two, and Greg got a lot of the letters. Greg Davis of the Historical Society got a lot of the letters and stuff. When you read the letters, you get really intrigued, because he goes this way. There were people trying to sell stone maps and stuff. He was trying to get a hold of the stone maps and make a purchase or something involved with them, and the Bilberry crosses. So he was different areas, but he was like, in general, I don't care what you're into in the superstitions, you become a fan of his, because he really was really covering a lot of ground, and he would go anywhere and everywhere and hit the ground, and inch by inch document what he was finding. And there was areas he was finding arastras. I know there was an area up in the north end along the Salt River where he found a gold bar and found some arastras, a small gold bar, and it's very, very cool. So he's someone that documented a lot of things. And then him and Barry Storm, but documented, and kind of, I went out and followed that up on these old tunnels on the west side of Bluff Springs that were obviously very old Spanish or Mexican mines, which predate, it had to go back maybe even prior to Waltz's time. The problem is, once people got into stuff like that back in those days, they hauled a lot of stuff out. I was very privileged to read a lot of what George Columborn and some people in the 20s and 30s talked about, and there was a lot of things that they were finding that probably were from Waltz's time or predated him, that were taken out of the mountains and made it into personal family collections. And it's unfortunate because they're just documented in private journals, and it shows that there was something. I've tried to relocate some of those sites, and that's been the difficult thing, because a lot of those sites, they didn't want anybody in. But one of them was one that there was Mexican pack saddles in it. And far as I can tell, I don't know a time since Waltz's time that there was pack trains, Mexican pack trains in the mountains. The fact that they found a number of Mexican pack saddles in a cave, and a number of other artifacts and stuff that were very, very old. And it was in a personal journal. It wasn't something written for a book or a manuscript. It was written privately. That tells me volumes that there was a lot of stuff going in there probably 1870, 1880. There was things going way back. So that kind of answers your question, I think. So I try. Let's see here. I'm trying to catch up, and you guys go too fast for me sometimes. The Celts rock the world. Have you been to the area sometimes referred to as the Tubs? Yes, I've been to the Tubs. Maybe a few mines in there. And there's, I don't know always if there's mineralization in the Tubs. There's a few areas that are like the Tubs, and they have copper, but nothing worth probably major mining or stuff. How about those lead crosses and swords found in Tucson? I thought I covered that once. I got a lot of stuff on that stuff because I got really interested in once, and it's down in the museum, and they don't really treat it very. They treat it. They basically dated all that stuff and found out it was all modern era. It was not real. But the museum, and I was going to go down. I'm going to be down in Tucson again here in the next 6 months, and I want to go see them. I think the last time I went, the museum closed before me and Trevor could get there, because I wanted to go look at what they have of the collection and talk to them about another visit where I could see the rest of the complete collection. They have all the data and the carbon dating and all the other stuff they did to it, and they have all that paperwork. But I wanted to get a book on the examination of that stuff, because they did it a modern examination. It's out there in the public. You can Google it, and if you look around for enough, you will find where the museum had everything looked at and determined they were faked. They're not fake, they're real. They're just not Viking or anything like that. Sorry if I break you on that, but okay, I'm trying to catch up. Guys, I wish there was a way you could do this. No, I can't do it with the mouse, because the mouse will stay in the same place as you guys add and scroll. Okay, the stuff found in Tucson. Have you been to the site where Bob Ward found the spike in the cactus? There's a lot of spikes. Bob Ward put a lot of spikes in cactus, and there's a lot of stuff. And a lot of things he did in the mountains, a lot of blazes. I've been to a lot, and most of the stuff that's in his books I've been to. People showed me where they're at and the stuff that remains. I've even located a few, and someone once told me that Bob had a sense of humor, I guess, to some degree, that he thought if there was a point A and a point C and he needed a point B, Bob would put it in there if he couldn't find it. Which is kind of demented and kind of funny, but yeah, it doesn't help any of us in the end. Before the development of antibiotics, many doctors would pesty. Okay, they're infections. Well, thank you for sharing. I found the stuff the world hasn't seen. Okay, there you go. Become those springs are too hot to use. Yeah, this one you can actually use up there, and I can't remember the name of it. There was a massacre up by it of some Apaches. There was a battle. Not a massacre. There was a battle up in there, a small battle. Beautiful statues, okay? Okay, we're still listening, or watching, or reading. I really enjoy their stories. Could go on in some of the walks in the mountains. Okay, let's smile just once on camera. I wish your younger son would just smile. The youngest one or Trevor? Oh, Tyler. Tyler will smile. He just won't on camera. He's not much of a camera. He's a behind the camera guy. Contaminated with diseases. My stuff is real, and it means that. Okay, 1960. Hit me up. I don't know if that hits you up. Okay, so anyways, I don't know what that means. Hit me up. Okay, and a lot of people reach out, and then they get kind of, I don't know. But yeah, you can always message me. You can always hit me on Facebook. You can hit me on the Chasing Legends page, the Legends of Superstition Mountain page on Facebook, because that official page, Legends of Superstition Mountains, the one that has the History Channel logo, I own that because they gave it to me. So most of the stuff having to do, which was someone else argued once, like they were going to History Channel, all this stuff, and I don't know, they gave me all that crap. So everybody bowed out and said, well, if you think you can do better than us, or you'll actually update it, we'll let you, you can have all that stuff. So I ended up with all the official stuff. Just to carry it on, just for to answer people's questions and stuff, because I thought the networks did a pretty crappy job most of the time. And I understand it. They got newer shows and other stuff to go. Why are they going to pay attention to anything else? And then I think the last administrator, other than me, passed away, and so then it just fell to me. Okay, I'm still trying to. The springs. My stuff is real. I'm amazed. Okay, we're back to that. Did the Superstition Mountain Museum ever release digital archives of the journal? What journal? You're going to have to tell me what journal of their journal. Oh, there is there's a digital. It's a CD. It's a disc. How many pieces can you make out of one lead cross? How many pieces can you make out of one lead cross? I don't know. Anyways, there is digital. I don't think it's a complete, but there's three. There's 3 discs. There's 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then 21 through 30. And then basically Greg Davis told me the journals ended. Jack Carlson had a lot to do with putting them together and printing them. There was a problem. It was becoming some of the same people doing it. I thought there was a problem with some of the information kept in them. And I was willing, I thought about talking to Greg about continuing with Jack. if I could sit with Jack Carlson or at least talk with him or Zoom him and kind of find out the particulars of how he went about it and everything and the typesets and so forth, I would organize and then continue the journal. I thought about it. And the problem became is I think it was the COVID thing, and I really couldn't get a hold of Jack, and we talked briefly. And then I just realized they were just printing them to give them away, and the museum seemed totally disinterested in continuing them. And they basically, I went down because I have the discs, but then I also went down one day and they had all the old hard copies going back to the first ones, and they had piles of them laying out there on a desk, and I looked at them all and I thought, well, Greg has a collection, but I might as well have a collection too. So I got every published journal there was. I think I got the complete collection, and I bought them all. They only wanted like a quarter each or 15 cents. It was like $5 for $1, something ridiculous. So I just bought them all. And then you want to hear the funniest part is there's a whole bunch of stacks of them. So I got a bin and put them in it because I wanted to keep them in good shape. I don't have the bookshelf space anymore to put them in. I would have loved to, and maybe something happens, I'll find bookshelf space for it. But I would have loved to have those on the bookshelf, but I didn't have room. So I put them in an action packer and put them up on the shelves and made sure so I could reference them and take them out and go through them and reference them for stories and stuff. And I don't know where they're at. So I got so much stuff now between the shelves and the filings here and then the files in there and then that stuff. I got so much stuff now. I'm not going to say crap. I can't keep track of it. So good thing that a lot of my stuff was digital, but I have the digital. I'll have to ask Greg, and if he gives me permission through the Historical Society, maybe we can put a lot of that stuff online in our archive stuff. It'll eat up room, but once we're done with the Bark Notes, maybe we'll start filtering about those. But there is one. Paul Shimmick put that together for the museum. If you go in the museum, there used to be a little stand, and if you went through, all 3 discs are in there. They're out of order, but there's a bunch of discs together. And I'll have to check next time and see if they're still there, and then check with Greg and everybody. Paul just did them as a favor for the museum, compiling and putting everything together. But if they don't have a problem with it, maybe make sure there's another generation of discs if they're out. But they are 3 CDs, and they play on your computer, and they have each issue in its complete entirety out there. And then I think they also have an index for all of them, so you can go through it and check the index. And like I said, I got the complete collection. There's 2 or 3 on my shelf because ones I've referenced for certain material. But yeah, Greg does have, the Historical Society does have a complete hard copy collection as well. There's not a lot of other copies or prints of them anymore. Okay, so but we're still working on the archival stuff. We still have film and stuff we're putting together. I got to make another trip. There's tons and tons of stuff. I've reached out to a number of other people, anyone that has 8mm or VHS or VHS-S or mini DV or any type of thing. The only thing we haven't found is we don't have a way to basically move beta. I haven't found any way to do that. Someone said they could. They had a beta player, so I might be able to check some of the beta and get that moved. Believe it or not, there's stuff on beta. So we're still trying to move that. We kind of do it in spurts because it takes so long, because everything has to either go in real time or even less than real time to digitally set up. It's not a fast thing. So we're continuing to do that, and we have the Bark Notes and that stuff. So, and that's the plan on the website, which is legendofthesuperstitionmountains.com, one big word. And we wanted to do that just to have archives. So instead of saying, oh, I'll try to get you the Bark Notes, which any of you that have asked for them and I said, yeah, I'll get them to you, found out I just never do, because by the time I get to copy them off, there's like 8 people, and I'm trying to go through messages and things and figure out who those 8 people were. Or even if I write it down, it gets lost in the mix because there's these yellow pads of paper. Everybody has them, right? And you have these yellow pads of paper, and you write notes on them. Well, I do that all the time. I have about 15 flying around all times of just different things written on them, and it's just variety. And I have to go through and try to consolidate them and move them under there more other, and they go into files. But I always got notes and everything people are talking about, and trying to keep keywords and things to remind myself what to look for or dig up and do. And it becomes such a mess. So right now I have a stack. It's probably about 6-7 inches high of just yellow legal pads with stuff written on them that I have to go through and type up and get stuff and put them in files and stuff before they just get falling apart and the pages are falling out and all that kind of stuff. All right, so here we go. This, the current drought of much of the U.S. I don't know. We've been getting a lot of rain. We have the low water levels. I think the droughts, because we had a good snowfalls and we seem to be getting decent rainfalls again. But I think the problem is the water usage, and I don't think it's the personal private citizen. I think it's our state and federal governments. And California uses a lot of water up. I've never understood why they don't do the desaltation plants or salinization plants or move that direction. They pull so much water out of the Colorado. That's been a big problem. I live off of a well, and the well's actually never really needed replenished and has zero arsenic, and it's done very, very well. And it's fed by groundwater, and there's a secondary well to back up the first well. But the water's been good and been fine. So I'm not saying there's not a drought, because there's been droughts, and there was a prolonged drought of around 20 years. But I think the hard part is we need literally something devastating to replenish, because literally as soon as the water comes through, we're pushing it out. And it usually ends up in the ocean because we don't have the capacity to hold it all. I know they're always releasing, and I've been, through the last 5-10 years, I've watched them releasing water down the Salt River because the dams have to release water. But then you look down at the Colorado River, and they have a completely different experienced problem. So I don't know how that associates, one goes with the other. I always put it this way: what you see on television and what they're telling you, there's always a bigger problem. There's some other ulterior problem than that. So I'm sure that kind of and the superstitions have been dry out, but they're not as wet as they used to be, but they seem to be fine. What's a good platform show all these new findings? What's a good platform to show all these new findings and statues and carvings that I've found? Can you put me in the right direction? What's the platform? What do you mean by platform? Is doing a video, or you're looking at an interview, or who you're looking to talk to someone, or an introduction of who can kind of go over the material for you? I'm not sure. You have to give me something a little more direct than that. Good platform, when you're trying to put it out there, or what you're trying to do. Some rivers are not navigable at this time. This is okay. I don't even know. I love those conquistadors. Great random statement. Love those conquistadors. Need that shirt. So could sunken relics be discovered in those places near superstitions? Sunken relics? I don't think the oceans and the water was that close. And the river, Salt River, was never, I don't know. There was a guy once told me there was Spanish galleons up the Salt River, up into the superstitions. And I was like, you're getting like Moses Noah's Ark type thing. I don't know if the river was ever that deep through there. And he was saying there was, I'm trying to remember. I think Randy and I were just like, the guy seemed very convincing about a lot of stuff. And then he told us about the hull or part of the ship that was remaining, like this Spanish galleon with treasure up by Horse Mesa. And I paused and I went, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, did you snap a picture of it? And he said, nah, I couldn't get a good picture of it. And I said, well, where's it at? And then he made this huge circle on the map. And I'm like, okay, that's not proof positive, but okay. So I don't know what to think of that. It always comes down as like everybody gets very general. Platform. I'm trying to think of platform. Are you looking to do a video, your YouTube channel, something you want to present on a YouTube channel? We could always help you with that. Once Trevor's healthy, Trevor can always come down. There's not a problem with that. He can set up, film you. You can put exactly what you want up. Trevor will even put your YouTube up, do all your stuff, edit stuff. He does stuff for a lot of YouTube channels. And he's actually worked for some attorneys around the country on some court cases and stuff. but he can put something together if you want to put it out there. If you're looking for a platform to show your discovery to people, if you want it to look professional and so forth, Trevor can do that. We run by the seat of our pants here because I'm the executive producer and I don't want anything too spit and polished. But as far as spit and polish and make it look really good, if you want a really super presentation, he can do it. There's other people that can. At least he's interested in the subject matter, and he does actually really good work. So like I said, he's worked with a number of for court interviews and stuff, and court materials that are presented to the court. There's a number of YouTube channels, and then there's other things he works on for other content, as well as documentary film stuff, or for people that have done documentary films. So it's good. So you can always get in contact with him through that. Somebody could just kind of look at the pictures I took, and I found the Superstition Mountains. Well, you could always, like I said, there's Facebook, and you can, I don't know if my Facebook's open to the public, because it just becomes overwhelming, because I have my family and friends and stuff in there too, and it got like way too like weird. I couldn't talk to anybody because I didn't even get to see like family members anymore because of the public. So I kind of like changed that up so I could hear from my brothers and sisters and family members in that, and I could see their posts once in a while. But there's always the Dutch Hunter Rendezvous on Facebook. There's always the Legend Superstition Mountains. There's so many different ways you can catch us through Instagram and stuff. There's ways you can message through Instagram, and we're on Instagram and Twitter too, Legend of the Superstition Mountain. So you can always contact me through there. All that stuff through those sites, you're contacting me directly. You're not contacting History Channel, unlike what people do. They try to complain to History Channel about me, and History Channel gave me everything, and they end up complaining to me about me, which is really funny. I don't know. But anyways, you can do that. Okay. So if you want to, and I have no problem. And then if you don't mind, if you want to, we'll connect. And the Greg Davis of the Historical Society is a good place to also kind of feed that stuff through. Greg is not the internet savvy guy. I don't know if he offers his email up. He has a public phone number, Greg Davis on Del Rio in Tempe. You can contact him for the archives and stuff, and you can make an appointment. You could go down to look at the archive or make an appointment with Greg for him to look through the material. I think he's a good person, as well as myself, to direct you to other people, whether they're with universities or somewhere else, to kind of have someone to authenticate or go through and tell you more of what they are. There's good people interconnected with that, with PhDs and all kinds of cool stuff. So we usually, if we think something's really good like that, you might have something really cool or something to kind of you'd want to authenticate it in that way. It's not like we're looking for you to give you a television show. We're trying to get you hooked with the people, the scholars, and the right people to kind of move you forward to kind of get that stuff. Greg's general interest is in research and acquiring stuff for the museum and the Historical Society, so he's not necessarily a Dutch hunter. He goes out with Dutch hunters, but he's more the collector for the universe of us for stuff. So Arizona's are bad. I got updates the levels daily. Okay, sunken relics would be classified as fake though. Sunken relics. Well, I don't know what you're saying sunken relics are though. Join the group. But I don't know what you're saying sunken relics where and how and what way. I mean, if you're saying there's a Spanish galleon at the bottom of the Salt River, well, no, because that became, in the 1920s became the lakes. So before that, it was a river, and it might have had a few areas where there were tubs that things were deeper, but I don't think it wasn't like a 30, 40, 50 foot deep river at any time, unless it was back in like maybe, I'm trying to think of how far back that would be, several thousand years ago or even earlier. So, and it would probably be even earlier than that. Because judging by the depth of the canyons and all, we're talking, it took a significant amount of time. Anyhow, so getting that, if there's something sunken that you think there is, I found seashells up in the upper regions of Superstition Mountain, and the earth was at one time covered by the sea. So, and relics can have a different meaning for different people at different times. Just because I find a seashell up at the top of the mountain, then I find an old Spanish mule shoe doesn't mean they're interconnected or anything like that. Again, too, there's also the relevance. I always find that puzzling with Oak Island is they find a piece of wood and they say, well, it dates from 1600. Well, that means the artifact they have is as old as 1600 from the carbon datum. Doesn't mean that's the day it was brought. There could be something 100, 200 years old that's brought somewhere. So it could be something from the 1800s that was deposited there. So you always have to look. So you can find the earliest possible date. It's always hard to find the later date. So don't say Spanish galleon, Lagina's crew line show. I joked with that with Gary Drayton. Me and him talked. I joked with him about that. It was funny because his eyes lit up for like a moment, and it was like I was like, "Oh, Gary, I have to tell you the story about the Spanish galleon down in Fish Creek, down off the Salt River." And his eyes lit up, and his head turned, and Shoes gave me a look to kill. Because it is a story, but it's not a real story. It's someone's tale. But yeah, Gary's definitely into the beachcombing and the sunken treasure, and that he really is into that stuff. And he's a really nice guy. So funny guy, fun guy, a nice guy. In his serious moment is also a very serious treasure hunter. So it was cool meeting him. But yeah, I did mention that. And he did do that kind of. So with that car with boxes of Dutch hunting history that will be regarded as a sunken relic, I don't think so. That was just a washed out car. And I don't know what you consider a relic. I guess it could be near, because Storm would have lost the car. That was the... yeah, I know who you're talking. Not Mid-Ow. I know who you're talking about because we just talked about him. Anyways, we're talking 50, 60 years. It's kind of a more modern relic. So, I don't know if I would consider it a relic. If I found a rifle from the 40s, 50s, 60s, I don't see it as relic. I always think in relic is 100 years old or older. So, and I think don't they classify something like that as if anything that's 100 years or newer or something like that? Isn't that the number? There's a something thing. It's like 50 up to 50 years for this, 100 years for that. But anything over 100 years, it's like. And there's some cool stuff I pulled out of the mountains because it was old, but it wasn't. It was like, I'm pretty sure the number was 100 on a few things, and I was like, it's 95 years old. It's mine. So, yeah, semantics, but sometimes semantics let you go a long way. So, yeah, I'm trying to remember their names now. Gary Drayton and the Lead Cross. Yeah, Gary, as much as he works on a TV show, you always don't underestimate people, the reality of the treasure hunter they are. So Gary Drayton, the guy on TV on Oak Island, is also probably very different than Gary Drayton, the treasure hunter. Don't mistake that with all of us. I think people who have met me at the Rendezvous will see one Wayne Tuttle. You'll see one here. You see one on the TV show. And then you're out in the mountains with me and you're like, oh, you're different here than you're different there. That when you're focused on certain things and your research and things get serious, there's a different perspective and stuff. And we can joke. Sitting around the campfire, it's fun to joke and tell great stories. It's very different when you're out there on the hunt or you got leads or you're looking for things. Kind of heads up. The stuff I found was believed Templar, Jesuit, Conquistador. Okay, that's three different, two of them kind of tie in. Indian chief statue, turtle statue, snakehead statue. Well, then you can get turtle, snakehead, you can get that stuff into the Mayans or the Aztecs, all the way to different styles of crosses in the rocks. Okay, well, not Dutchman stuff. Okay, well, I don't know if that's Templar stuff, but okay. Yeah, the Templar stuff, I don't know. I like Templar stuff. I like the history of the Templars and stuff. There are people that go like way, I don't know if everybody kind of really gets into that stuff, but there's people that get kind of wacky and wonky and kind of nutty out there with the Templar stuff and some of the stuff. And there's a very cool history and origins and certain history about them, and then there's people that kind of put them in that space, kind of like the Tucson lead artifacts and stuff about that, of like thinking the Vikings were rolling through. I've always been one to believe that if you were looking for a place the Templars went, Oak Island is always kind of like, okay, I get it, but man, the Arizona desert after the Middle East, this place had to be this would be a great place for them to hide crap. I've never found any evidence. There's one Templar cross I've found, and I'm not sure if it's Templar up in the mountains, but it is in the mountains, and it always made me kind of rub my head. And the other thing I heard was Bob Ward was really into the Templars, which made me kind of do one of those jerks, like, huh. Found that odd because there's not a lot of Templar guys in the mountains. Tonight is Chinese. It's not tacos or pizza. That was the vote. I don't know how much the history learning as I go in the Iraqi war, the climb the mountains off trail. I don't know much about history. Buy books. Books are always good. Anybody with watch Terry Carter. Yeah, Terry. Well, Terry did another interview. Wait till you see, Liz. Wait till you see some of Terry's videos because me and Terry goofed off on some of them with a couple different people. We had a blast. Oh no, he interviewed me again because I was going to say, I remember sitting down, but me and him goofed off as I did his intro. I did intros for him because I told him you never do intros. You don't have anything that leads into it. You just got your music. Bow, bow. But Terry and I are buddies. I like Terry, man. Terry's an awesome dude. We are night and day in what we do content-wise. Terry, I think, would be a fascinating, awesome interview for something like this. He refuses to do it, but he has this really killer voice, and I'd love to do something because me and Terry hit it off really great from the start. I've done a number of interviews with him. There's more to come, and like I said, when you see if he puts some of that stuff out, it's so funny because we were just having a good time, and then I decided to jump in behind him and just talk over him to introduce his guests and stuff. But, I think the world of Terry, man. I always watch his videos. And, it's all aside. His content is different than my content. And what he kind of posts, a little bit of all and everything and stuff. We talk from different areas. I talk from my kind of ideology and my thought process and my research. He interviews for other people to tell their stories. So we're kind of different in our... But we're buddies. And I think the world of Terry. He's a good guy. Yes, he is a good guy. My focus is on the Twin Canyons. What more can you say of that area? I don't know what the Twin Canyons are. So I hate when the people once told me, yeah, can you tell me all the stories about Box Canyon? I live in Arizona. There's freaking like 158 Box Canyons. Though I'm not laughing at you. It's just that stuff kind of throws dinosaur. There's a lot of dinosaurs in Arizona. Did you see the History Channel video? I don't know which one that is. I know we've talked about. I tried to get Terry into a bunch of different stuff. I pushed him to do Blind Frog Ranch, and I won't talk at length about depth of television because Terry's had his offers. But yeah, I tried to get Terry into TV because I thought he'd be great on TV. He's just got that personality I think people would really like. And if you asked me to do a show today to have someone on that'd be fun to work with and stuff and do on TV and I think would come off really well would be Terry. I don't think he has any interest in that kind of stuff at all. And I've tried. But he has his connections and stuff, and I'll always be friends with Terry and always tell people to go watch Terry's videos. So, and I think we've crisscrossed where we're part of each other's videos here soon, more and more and more. He would let me interview him, but he interviewed me and everybody else around camp and stuff. So he comes to my rendezvous and takes my material. But it's all good, man, because we all love us some Terry Carter. So, and he watches these two, by the way. So he's probably sitting there right now blushing. He's blushing like a 16-year-old girl. Yeah. So that's enough. There's never enough time. I will set back watch. A lot of people want to talk with you. Stay safe, stay free. I will sit back and watch a lot of... Yeah, thanks there. Robert Lawton Bowman. Blind Bowman. I always think that's cool. You should have just kept Blind Bowman on here. Or BB. BBM. That's not bad either. But no, dude. Always cool. Always cool. You stay safe, man. And you kind of keep things healthy in your own world and stuff and all. Again, and it's another person, and I think he would be, if we ever got to sit down and talk, I'd like to talk, to Robert or Bowman or whatever he wants me to address him as sometimes, is his perspective because he's been at different odds and ends with me because of how I am. I'm a little irreverent and I can be, I have fun with things and I have a sense of humor, which is very apparent. And he would say it's like can be frustrating because it's not that I may not believe you. I'll listen to you. I'll read every word you write. You can take it away. It's probably printed somewhere already, because if you send me something, generally as a rule, once I read it, I'll usually print it off and put it in a file, just so I can reference again as we talk, because there's so much stuff coming in and out. And if you notice, I don't do a read the emails and texts I get, because everybody's allowed their opinions and they're not to be shared. Even if people ask me to share them, I wouldn't do it, because you come off completely different. But I'd love to do an interview with someone like him. I know Brian McDonough's out there. There's a number of different people that have had that difference of opinions, but we've had good conversation, and we've gotten along well most of the time. And I'd love to hear their perspective of, like, I probably drive them nuts sometimes. And they understand I know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about to some degree, and I'm differing than them, but I'm sure I frustrate the hell out of them. And I'd really like to hear their perspectives and all, because they're all cool and all that stuff as far as I'm concerned, and I do my thing, so it's all good. So there he goes. Thank you, Derek, for your service to our country. I respect your opinion. That's, you reach out. No, I don't have a problem. You know, that's the one thing. I'll always talk to people, and I get a lot of messages, and I've gotten boxes of stuff, and I've got emails, and I've gotten mail. Yeah, they still actually send mail in the postal service. I've met with people. I've sat and had lunch with people. I won't just go willy-nilly in the mountains with people, but I've always tried to kind of connect with people because of bringing research. And I want to bring your story, and maybe I can bring your story to here, but if not, without your permission, maybe I bring it and then it eventually ends up in the archives, and people get to over time see those stories and stuff. So that's that history of it all. And people think, oh, the Dutch hunting whole thing is dead, but there's 100 or more people out there reaching out all the time about stories or various things, or looking for things, or I found this or that, or my interpretation. They're still out there. It's just different. It's purely driven, instead of at one time where it was letters and they met in coffee shops and it was far more private and much more personable, it's now social media, which I don't always think is a good thing, because it's hard for us in this respect, like what we're doing today. I can talk a lot, I can read stuff, I can kind of go back and forth a little, but I'm dealing with a large number of people. Let me see. It's showing 120 different people, so I'm having to have a conversation over an hour with 120 different people. So it's kind of a little like a lecture, but I'm getting some feedback and some back and forth. But you can see where that can be so difficult with the sustaining. It's not like there's 3 or 4 of us in a coffee shop having coffee and talking for an hour or two, because then there's so much more personal ideology conveyed in that thing. I still think there's it's not communication is a problem. We have plenty of communication in this world. It's the conversation. People have not remained conversationalists. If you ever want to hear wonderful conversations, sit down for an extended period of time. Myself, Thomas Glover, you get Clay Worth sitting there. There's 3 or 4 you can get us, and they're engrossing conversations. And you will have people that will slap you and tell you to shut up when we're all talking, because it'll become engrossing, and we'll ask questions of people and try to draw them into it and stuff. And that stuff's really, really good. So we didn't hurt it because it went out of vogue, but social media didn't replace it as well as it should have. Social media it's not personable enough like the old days of conversation and letter writing. That's, a big thing. And yeah, so, and you will find a lot of people, you can tell that a lot of younger generation people have a difficult time having those conversations. It's not storytelling. It's just the ability to think and talk and speak and be able to follow and work and kind of meld those conversations together. It's an old art form, and I always feel bad that it could be a bit lost, because that's something that's important. Social media has just dumbed it down a bit. And the same thing for Google. Everybody can just whip up their phone and become like a mini expert on things, just trying to hit Wikipedia and stuff, which it's giving you one side, one source generally, and you're not really learning much. You're just getting kind of like a nice skin overview, just kind of look at what something might kind of mean, and there's no real depth. I mean, if you want to know something about a subject, I always say you need to find 3 or 4 books and read more in depth about any subject, and from different perspectives. So there's that. Okay. It's not dead yet, and I don't think they'll ever find much on Oak Island. Oak Island's a well-produced TV show. I'm going to get out of here in a few so I can run out and get Chinese food. I'm running long, but I'm going to be running long. But Oak Island's a very well-run TV show because every week they're going to basically go down and look down a hole and act like they just about found something, and then they're not going to find anything. And then they will do 25 episodes of looking down the hole and drilling a new hole and then closing that hole and going to a new hole and not finding anything. And it's funny because I heard someone say something, they're in season 10 and they're looking at negotiations for season 11, which means we're going to go through 25 episodes where they don't really find anything. And we know we're going to go. They've done a masterful job of keeping us pulled in. Now, Frank says it's a boring show and it sucks. I like it. I watch it. The 2-hour premiere came out. I've watched half of it. I got an hour in, and I was in the second half, but I was so busy all the week, and we had a Don's Club meeting, and there's so much going on, I haven't been able to really sit down and get any television time in at all. So, and then last night I watched the Titans and the Packers. So, there's sometimes things that are more important in the moment in that game. I hate watching sports recorded. I like to watch sports live, so that took precedence. I first Thursday night game of the season that was actually a halfway decent game that I wanted to watch the matchup. So, well, don't thank Trevor. He's not even here. There's no Trevor today. So, at the top I mentioned that he's sick. So he's out. He'll be back. You don't have to climb with me. I don't mind climbing. Just need a new set of eyes, and you can see the pics and maybe give me a pic. Yeah, just get it along. Like I said, I gave you a number of different sources and different things. You message me on any one of those forums and stuff and all that. Let me know who you are, because sometimes people use different names, and then I'm like, I don't know who the hell I'm talking to. But let me know all that stuff. Hey, Tim, what's up? Who won? The Titans won. So, I'll ruin it for everybody that recorded it. Thanks, Tim. But anyways, reach up me through there and I'll share my email with you and get you an email where you can send the pics if you want, or we can, however you want to do it. So there's different ways or different methods and stuff. And I'll be out and about, and I generally try to be somewhat accessible and so forth, especially during this time of the year. I'll be back and forth and stuff. I got something, ever see Thumbus? Stone with cross hatching gravel on one side. No, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, well, at least I'm honest with it. Hello, Terry. And okay, Gil Young must have called it a night. And so, like we kicked it off at the beginning and all, so to all the people who've had some problems, and definitely this week, like I said, it was a rough week for a number of different people. And we always kind of wish them well and kind of navigating through those times, because that's really rough. And there's nothing makes you feel more alone when everything's getting thinner. And definitely know that sitting around the campfires over the years and so forth. So I want to make sure, as we're kind of wheeling it out and riding it out here and getting this done, so I can run out for some Chinese food. It's a new Chinese place. I don't remember the name of it offhand, so I got to go look at the menu and see if there's anything I really want there. But yeah, Friday night Chinese. That's different, but I don't mind different. So I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and hope you have a good time with your friends and family or whoever. Cook up a storm, stay healthy, and those who are not staying healthy, get healthy, because it's a long winter, and I know stuff is still out there, and definitely the flu season comes around. And while I seem to kind of sustain through all this and do pretty well and all, there's people like Trevor that seem to catch any passing bug that floats through the air. And that can be rough on you as well. So, taking some hits on the health. So, therefore, there you go. So, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. You agree with Frank. Who's Frank? Frank. I don't know who Frank is. I agree with Frank. I'm looking for Frank. Anyways, I don't know. Am I missing something there? Anyways, okay. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I don't always agree with Frank. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there. Yeah, this new angle is not doing me favors, trying to catch everything as I'm looking, because you can tell I'm having to move myself to look a different direction to see the screen. So we're gonna have to fix that. Treasure of Coronado was never found here. Fort Huachuca, some soldiers found, never found again. Okay. So anyways, I want to get out of here. Sorry for everybody that joins late and kind of jumped in late, but it's coming up on dinner time, and we put in almost a good hour and a half, and I want to get rolling, pick up Chinese food, and kind of warm myself up. I get the dog out of the window. I don't know why the dog's stuck in the window the whole time. Jax, what are you doing? Crazy dog. So anyways, and these monitors are going to probably give me a headache here soon. Hey, buddy. So thank you, everybody, for joining us again for this week. And just great time and stuff. I know some of the viewership we're having is a little bit bumpier because I know there's the different rollbacks and clocks and stuff, and people got to adjust. We never change here. We're always the same time here in Arizona. Arizona time, which is awesome. But anyways, thank you, everybody. And everyone, please have a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Have a good holidays. Everybody, please smile and perk up and cheer up and trying to find a reason to smile sometimes. It's a silly old world, but this is the world we got. All right? So besides all that, thank you for watching. And remember, because this is the most important message of the whole time, we only spend an hour and a half to get here, where I explain to you guys, so you guys always get this part, that always remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle, you're not, and this was live on Friday's Legend of the Superstition Mountains. Everybody take care and catch you later. Okay, there we go. And